Edna's crazy. Not Edna?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it erupts quite often, though, right? To go photograph it?
And they, because I don't want to get.
He's not gonna be in here. So that's the thing, like, he's not moving around the room, so I figured it's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to even have it on the official vote, like, really get less.
Which way you want to go?
Because they've been doing that, and they should be doing their own thing, if they're not.
I get it, but when you have two officials, they essentially here.
Just like it's under Schumer, side.
Okay.
So if he takes off that.
And right now.
This will fill up.
I know, well, but,
They're just over the right now.
I mean, I'll let you manage it the way that you want to. That was my thought process. If I have to, I don't want to tell him he can't take any pictures, but,
I just,
and he's one, I mean, you know him.
What did you do?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine, and like, that's fine, I don't want to have them.
Were you able to film?
I'd rather him just be in here for me, work with that, maybe work around him.
I had a test here.
You can pick that in spot.
Buenos Aires,
Comfortable with it.
5 days.
I mean, I'm comfortable with wherever you guys are, so whoever we have in here now, who's here?
Basically.
Oh, they pulled
Okay.
it out?
Where are you, back there?
I'm Getty. I'm right here.
But,
Did it affect them very much?
oh, yeah.
Okay, so we can't have,
No.
all right, so one of you guys needs to go out. I don't know,
Did she go?
Who is here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right?
Yeah, I just arrived, so I can go.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna have you go out now,
You're
just because.
You're third on the list, dude.
Well, I'm clear on the list. I don't know, we follow the
Right,
list.
yeah.
Yeah. Are we doing hierarchy or are we doing arrival?
We're doing the 15-minute thing. If you just got here, then you can come in the next, first in the next group.
That's
But-
what they've been doing in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, the rule for this room is that if you're here after 15 minutes prior.
There should be.
You're welcome. I was like, they're doing out of arrival order.
15 minutes.
Yeah, so like.
It changes every.
After.
And he's like, no, every single time it's like,
Right,
and
for sure.
I was like,
No.
no. He was like, it has been. And I was like, okay.
Whatever you want, but that's not until I'm put it that. That's been when I was before. Because it pisses me off when it's not by the checking order.
When did you get
Well, it also depends on who you work for. I understand.
I know.
No, I think it should matter to everybody, even if I was not.
He was here,
Because
he was
it's
here
all-
at
All right,
like
cool.
1:45.
All right,
I know it sounds like a.
We need to move someone else up. Is that whoever?
Yeah.
I think I would still feel that way because
I was here, and it was just me and Jacqueline.
I know.
You guys-
everyone's vying to be here at 6, like, you're like 5 in the morning. like,
Yeah.
how long?
Yeah.
It doesn't-
I was
you can't
burdened.
have- He's just talking about.
Okay.
I agree.
Still,
Just
still,
Yes.
we need to have one more person go out. I don't know who is here, but
What are
apparently.
the spots? What are, who?
Out.
hierarchy.
What spot do you want to?
I don't, we're not removing a spot. We just have 8 people. 7 is the absolute max. So who was here last?
I think I was here last.
Okay, sorry.
It's fine. I'll come back.
We got a lot of,
The last.
we got a lot of people, so we're doing quick rotation. Okay,
Should I not be here? I can go back there.
stay there, that's fine. Jacqueline's here. Al's back there.
Still got 8, Matt.
How are you?
If you go up there and stay there, if you're
Just
comfortable.
some
staying there.
biopsies. to make sure
Is that
I'm
okay?
cancer.
I know, when she had a
Just
face,
don't
I
make
really
me
went like 2 seconds.
Oh, no. Yeah, I try to avoid
I don't like.
You were just
corners
like,
up
you're
there.
tall, you got some wind up in you.
Yeah.
Um,
I usually try to stay out of the top.
you're good.
She's been doing that back there.
You're good.
She's been doing that back there.
On the riser. Yeah, you're fine. On the riser, yeah.
It did look like space. It's kind of member donated.
So can't have you two both. It's too much. Can I get one of you to go over here for now?
Yeah.
Do you mind doing that? And then we'll do, I'm getting real lucky with 7 people. Ryan is only like 6. And then you'll move up to there for the first rotation, to this side.
Or you may start over here
Start back here.
and then go
Just-
the side.
Yeah.
Alright.
Cool. So just stay, you know, distant. Thank you, Steph. And Al, Shingle's gonna be behind you on this rider.
Yeah.
Where did you come from? Okay. Are you gonna hang out here the whole time? Okay, so,
We just have to keep you 6 feet from the camera at all times. So if you can't do that, then
that can be 60 today. All right, so I'm gonna have you over here, Shingle's over there, and then Schumer's up there.
yeah, he's gonna stay in the.
Schumer's gonna.
Both him and I are colleagues.
Okay, can you guys, so you two are guys from
Yeah, you have to
JG.
sit down. Yeah.
Is there a way you guys can rotate in and out, or both of you?
I'll have to
need
stick in the front.
to- So these two are both the Schumers.
Oh, well, didn't have that.
Two from Schumer.
Should only be one.
So yeah, like,
So,
yeah, I guess
these two are okay.
usually it's fine, but
Yeah, we can do rotation.
yeah. Oh, I know.
That was all preschool. They should be. Okay.
Yeah, it should be this, over this one. They should be. But when I.
It doesn't matter. I'm good.
I'm good. Are you here? You'll be here. I'll go there. Give you some space.
All right.
Come on now.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Did you sell those shoes from Harley?
No, I did not. I've had these shoes for a long, long time.
You know, you got sponsored by them, right?
Yeah. Signature mile coming soon. I'll have a signature Sears shoe. That'd be
It would be hilarious.
The harness.
Candy S. 21.
The candy is right.
It's not,
It's our first red shoe.
No, they'll be pink. Pink pants, man. Pink
Come on,
pants.
come on, come on. When Harnick wears pink, it's really salmon.
Okay. The signature salmon shoe. You're right. We have to church it up a little bit.
Air Force Harnicks.
yeah, just stepping out and just walking.
Harnick
walking
Tesla
walking.
edition. Salmon interior.
Like, if he does that,
Pink spinners.
So why don't we let them stay with the beginning and we'll rotate out? Like if you stay in this spot.
I don't know if it, yeah, to stick with candy, it'd have to be a candy.
You like the new gig?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
just let you know, our guys are gonna be
I don't think it's related to what he
rotating,
did.
so he'll be cutting in front of you.
Yeah.
The
And
culture
that's kind of
problem,
what we talked about.
the inconsistency in talent and motivation.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
The bad part about the Navy was that we were really educated for the journalists part of it, and really the people above us that were telling us what to do
Yeah.
and directing us had no idea why or how we did what we did.
Photo illiterate.
And oh my God,
In any normal times.
it's like fucking cool.
Yeah, no, I
But I kind of
Why
forgot
do you
that.
need all this gear to go to here? I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah. And that has a lot to do with their kind of officer path.
I mean, can you imagine those things that happen?
Yeah, I was quite happy to get out and start working with the customer.
There was one entrance.
At the end.
You had to go
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about the same size as that, except for the fact that we had 4 computers like that. So when they tell me, you don't want to be in the room, he literally couldn't fit,
We've got editors and they're don't know how to use fucking Photoshop. You know, and like, how is that even fucking possible? But
I've been around since the dark room.
yeah, they literally have, and they, and, you know, there was I hate to say, but there was a time and an age when literally the pictures came in and you just kind of pushed a button and moved them on to a different place. There really was no editing involved in it, not like there is now. Again, you know, when there was film, there was editing, and then for a time there was nothing. The picture just came in and moved it somewhere else. Now we're doing remote editing and we're shooting and they're getting all these pictures. They have to start fucking learn how to edit again. It's been a challenge over the last like 3 or 4 years. So like, how did you forget this shit? Seriously?
Some of things are very, very difficult for them.
So we're gonna do,
No, like I'm teaching location using like small lights, not the whole cart full of like photogenics.
that line's been around. We have,
I mean, I saw as a place we've kept those dinosaurs on hand to like light the
once
whole
you're done with this
house
spot,
instead of
we're
train
walking over to get out.
class.
Go in the new route.
Yeah. I was like, we need to look at replacing these. And let's go with something with battery. Because photogenic went out of business. That happened like in the last, I think it happened just before the pandemic.
Is that good?
Still there.
Same spot.
Great. Good afternoon. I am delighted to be here with all of you and joined by our speaker, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Congressman Takano, who will be here momentarily, Leader Schumer, the lead sponsor of the Equality Act in the Senate, Senator Merkley, and 2 of our greatest champions, of course, Senator Booker and Senator Baldwin. Today, the House will take up and pass for the second time the Equality Act, H.R. 5. And we are really excited to have the incredible support of President Biden and his commitment to make the Equality Act the law of the land. As you all know, our country was the first country founded on the principle of liberty and justice for all. And we have made progress in that quest. We've stumbled sometimes, but we've made some progress. But the LGBTQ community, while having made some progress, continues to be in this fight for full equality. In most states, members of the LGBTQ community are at risk of losing an apartment, being denied credit, being turned away from service on a jury, all because of who they are or who they love. Every American deserves respect and dignity, and it's important that the Equality Act become law because it will once and for all ensure that LGBTQ Americans can live lives free of discrimination. And in particular, it amends the existing civil rights architecture and adds sexual orientation and gender identity to employment, education, housing, credit, jury service, public accommodations, and federal funding. It's a fully inclusive civil rights law that will once and for all make discrimination illegal in this country. Finally, it's not a controversial issue anymore. 83% of Americans support anti-discrimination legislation for LGBTQ Americans. 68% of Republican voters. So this is not a controversial issue. We've built a coalition that ranges in everyone from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to the ACLU and everyone in between. Over 600 major organizations, hundreds of business leaders representing some of the most important companies in America all support the Equality Act. And I'll end with just a word in remembrance of our extraordinary colleague, the late John Lewis, who at a very critical moment in our fight for the Equality Act made certain that people understood the urgency of this action and the importance of doing this comprehensive bill. And I hope in his honor, we will finally make the Equality Act the law of the land. And with that, I'm delighted to introduce the Senate sponsor, the lead sponsor of the Senate, Senator Jerrold.
The Equality Act is all about freedom. President Lyndon Johnson said, the freedom is the right to share fully and equally in American society. It is the right to be treated in every part of our national life as a person equal in dignity and promise to all others. But today, LGBTQ Americans are not free. They do not share fully and equally in our national life. They are not treated as individuals equal in dignity and promise to all others. In 29 states, it is still legal today to discriminate against Americans because of who they are and whom they love. In over half the states of the Union, LGBTQ Americans can be married in the morning, ejected from a restaurant at lunch, denied a mortgage, dismissed from jury in the afternoon, evicted from their house that night. It is way past time we change that. Way past time we pass a National Equality Act. Together, we all introduced this bill in 2015. In fact, John Lewis was standing right here, well, not in this room, but across from the Senate side. And I think, as David mentioned, that his presence was powerful then, and as we think of him, it's powerful now. And he said we should get in good trouble, engage in good trouble, and we need a lot of good trouble this bill passed. In 2019, we had a powerful moment in May 17th, 2019, with consideration of passage of the Equality Act in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I applaud my House colleagues for that tremendous victory. Well done. That was an awesome moment. But the leadership of the Senate at that same time refused to hold a vote, refused to hold a debate, refused to hold a hearing on this fundamental issue of freedom. But this year, 2021, it's different. We have leadership of the House and leadership of the Senate that supports this vision of opportunity and equality for all. We also have a tremendous number of civil rights partners that are taking us forward in this effort. The NAACP, the Human Rights Campaign, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and National Urban League that are working passionately and diligently to make sure we get this right. And this year is different because we have a President, Joe Biden, who believes in the dignity and humanity of every American. And it's different because we have more Senate sponsors. And as David mentioned, we have more organizations, we have more businesses, we have more religious organizations with us at this moment. My friends, it is time we end this dark history of prejudice and discrimination. and of the House, Speaker Pelosi.
Welcome you over to the House side. It's always a pleasure to welcome back the distinguished now Majority Leader of the Senate back, Senator. And even more of a pleasure with Senator Baldwin with you returning to the House. We always such pride in her being in the House, and then when she went on to the Senate as well. And thank you for being here for this very special occasion for all of us. Senator Booker, welcome to the House, not necessarily back, but welcome. And it's an honor to be here with Mr. Takano, the Chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, but a leader in the Equality Caucus, and of course, our Chair of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Nadler, who has made so many things possible for us. It's an honor to be with you. David Cicilline is a person we're very, very proud of. And we thank you, David, for giving us this opportunity today, and to you, Senator Merkley. Senator Merkley referenced to when we were together 5 years ago. We were in the LBJ room, as a matter of fact, over on the Senate side, when this Equality Act was introduced. Senator Merkley, Congressman Cicilline were the lead sponsors, but as Senator Merkley mentioned, right there standing with them was John Lewis, and that was very important. We stood there with an icon of the civil rights movement in a room named for LBJ, who had been the sponsor who fought for and signed the Civil Rights Bill. The Civil Rights Act is a pillar of freedom in our country. It is not amended lightly. So how proud were we to have our beloved, as I said, John Lewis and the Congressional Black Caucus with us on that day as they gave their imprimatur to opening up the Civil Rights Act to end discrimination against the LGBTQ community. The two sponsors of the bill have said why it shouldn't be necessary, but why it is necessary and why it's important for us to act. And as we remember John Lewis's life, we remember his words spoken at the Pride Parade in Atlanta, shortly after being diagnosed with cancer. We are one people, one family. We all live in the same house. And those words have been an inspiration to us. In closing, I just our two lead sponsors, Mr. Merkley and Mr. Cicilline, talked about the outside groups who are endorsing this legislation. And I want to thank all of them. For some, it's the easiest thing in the world. For others, it took a level of courage and, shall we say, fortitude to go forward. But all of them, very important as we do our inside maneuvering to get as many votes as possible, hopefully as bipartisan as possible, the outside mobilization. So it's essential to bring have a drumbeat across America for freedom, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much for being here. I'm going to excuse myself to go to the floor as we have the bill on the floor right now, and I don't want to lose my time. I don't know who's in charge there, but I don't want to lose my time. With that, I'm very pleased to yield to the distinguished former member of the House, now Majority Leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, and a champion on this issue when he was in the House and now as a leader in the Senate. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Speaker Pelosi. It's great to be here. I want to thank all of my colleagues. I want to thank my dear colleague, Senator Merkley, for his steadfast, unrelenting passion on this issue. He reminds us every day how we have to pass the Equality Act, because that's what America is all about. And Jeff has been a great leader here, and I thank him. Tammy Baldwin, of course, is one of our just outstanding senators who's been right by Jeff's side pushing this bill. And I want to thank all of the House sponsors and Senator Cory Booker, who is also at Mr. Merkley's side pushing this legislation. And I want to start by addressing head-on some of the despicable comments made by a few Republicans about trans people. Their attacks on trans people and the transgender community are just mean, and show a complete lack of understanding, a complete lack of empathy. They don't represent our views, and they don't represent the views of a majority of Americans. Their despicable comments just make my blood boil with anger. If I didn't have a mask, you could see my teeth gritting. But that's why we're here today, to talk about the Equality Act. That's why we need it, because of the hate out there that gets in the way of the great American dream of equality. In many ways, the story of America has been about making those words true for all Americans. That's what brings us here today, to reintroduce the Equality Act in the Senate. Essential, urgent, long overdue, that will move us closer to a society where all Americans are equally treated under the law. Even today, the signs of discrimination based on sexual orientation abound. From education to housing to family planning, from the workplace to adoption to immigration. Discrimination against LGBTQ+ people remains a serious problem that demands Congress's attention. Congress must pass the Equality Act so that LGBTQ+ Americans will no longer have to face discrimination in some of these most basic areas of life. This legislation is personal for me. Just 6 years ago, LGBTQ Americans like my daughter won the legal right to marry who they love. The Equality Act would make sure she can continue living her life with her wife with the security and dignity of knowing she won't face basic discrimination because of who she is. So proud of them, so proud. Now, no American should ever face discrimination because of who they are and who they love. When the Equality Act passed the Congress last year, it was a bipartisan vote. Yet for years, Leader McConnell buried the Equality Act and other common sense bipartisan House-passed bills in his legislative graveyard. Those days are over. Those days are over. Now, with Democrats in the majority, the Senate will have the opportunity to act on this critical civil rights legislation. I will use my power as majority leader to put it on the floor and let's see where everybody stands. Let's see where everybody stands. I'm hopeful that just like in the House, the Equality Act will get Republican votes and pass the Senate with bipartisan support. And of course, we now have an ally in the White House with President Biden, who's promised to make the Equality Act a priority. Discrimination against LGBTQ Americans should be over once and for all. And Democrats will fight tooth and nail to make sure that that happens. And now I'm going to turn it over to a dear friend, a fellow New Yorker, who whenever it comes to civil rights is at the forefront, Congressman Jerrold Nadler.
Thank you very much, Chuck. First, let me begin by thanking Congressman Cicilline for his leadership on this landmark legislation, and thanking Speaker Pelosi for her steadfast support of this legislation. The Equality Act represents one of the most significant opportunities we have had to expand civil rights in this country in many, many years. For a long time, whenever the LGBTQ community came to Congress, it was to defend their rights, from the Defense of Marriage Act to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Even when we considered ENDA, there was a major discussion as to whether we can include protections for transgender people. It is not lost on me that this is only the second time in history that Congress has been able to consider truly comprehensive LGBTQ civil rights legislation. And I could not be more proud of the gains we have made to even be standing here today. By freeing the LGBT community from discrimination, the Equality Act makes America a little more free for everyone. We cannot rely on the Supreme Court to continue to advance these issues for us. Instead, I expect that without the Equality Act, we will begin to see the court chipping away at the rights the LGBT community has already had acknowledged. I am hopeful that with Majority Leader Schumer at the helm of the Senate and President Biden in the White House, that we have a chance to see this signed into law and to take decisive action against the discrimination faced by the LGBT community nationwide. Thank you very much. Like Speaker Pelosi, I have to get back to the floor for the debate. But before I do that, it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Booker.
It is so good that we are here today, but let's be clear, I would not be here today if it wasn't for foot soldiers of justice who fought to push this body to pass civil rights legislation that gave me and other African Americans equal dignity, equal rights, and equal opportunity in this country. John Lewis, who has passed us, bled for that right. And so now here we are again in a nation where the ideals of liberty and equality and equal justice under law are what we say, how we define our aspirations, but we still fall short. We still live in a nation where the destructive darkness of discrimination reigns, enshrined in the laws of this land that prevent equal dignity and equal equality to LGBTQ Americans. That is unacceptable. And so let us all feel the fierce urgency of now to not just see this legislation pass in the United States House of Representatives, but for the sake of our ancestors and generations to come, may it pass in the Senate and get to the floor, get to the desk of the President of the United States for his signature. Thank you. And now I bring up Representative Takano.
Thank you, Senator Booker. And thank you, Senator, for reminding us of the history of civil rights and how if it weren't for the foot soldiers, we both wouldn't be here. And I remember being at my first inauguration with President Obama, and he invoked the image of Seneca Falls, Selma, and Stonewall, drawing that direct line of civil rights history of a nation becoming a more perfect union. Thank you to David Cicilline for your amazing efforts of building this coalition. It's truly moving to be here with you, David. And Chairman Nadler had to go back to the floor, but if you've ever had Chairman Nadler tell you stories about his conversations with Bella Abzug, Jerry, before LGBT members were really a presence on the Hill, there was Jerry Nadler. So we are so proud of him. Senator Merkley, we're so proud of the work that you've done. Amazing work. And I want to talk to you more about what we're going to talk about. David, we're going to talk about David. All right. Almost 30 years ago, I was outed in my first campaign for Congress. 27 years ago, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was established in the military. 25 years ago, the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, was signed into law. And nearly 10 years ago, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. 7 years ago, in the United States v. Windsor case, it struck down DOMA. 5 years ago, marriage equality became the law of the land. And last year, a great nation cares about the dignity and well-being of its most vulnerable citizens. Today, as I go back to the floor, and thankfully the speaker is going to take her magic pen on the floor to extend the amount of time I have here. But I'm going to cast my vote. I'll be thinking of all the LGBTQ activists who marched, protested, and built a movement to protest the lives of LGBTQ people and expand our rights. I'm ready to go vote. And before I do, I want to introduce a pioneer a hero of mine. I knew her when she was back in the House and watched her become a senator with the integrity of being elected to office, already out, not coming out afterwards. Truly a trailblazer, Senator Baldwin.
Well, I want to start by thanking my colleagues for your courage and your standing up and getting us to this moment. I feel like we should have a drum roll because soon the House will vote for the second time to advance the Equality Act. I appreciated everybody's comments, but I wanted to also appreciate Leader Schumer's comments with two regards. One is decrying and condemning in the strongest of terms the unfortunate and hateful remarks of some of our colleagues. And the level of ignorance is unacceptable. And but I also hearken to the power of the LGBTQ movement of visibility helping to change hearts and minds. And that's what this long movement is about. I secondly appreciated Leader Schumer's personal remarks. You know, he said it's personal for me. And I will certainly say this is personal for me too. Not only as a member of the LGBTQ community, but for my brief time as a practicing attorney before I was full-time involved in public service. I had the occasion to represent clients in the LGBTQ community who had faced discrimination at the workplace or in seeking housing. And I got to see how devastating that can be, especially when the law falls short in terms of protections. In a majority of states and local jurisdictions, LGBT Americans live without fully inclusive non-discrimination laws and can still face discrimination because of who they are or who they love. And that's just wrong. And it's time to end this kind of discrimination against the LGBTQ community. All Americans should have the full freedom of equality. It's why we're here today. It's why I'm so proud to stand with my colleagues in the House and Senate as the House prepares to pass the Equality Act. We've been here before. This year, we have a pro-equality majority in both the House and the Senate, and we have a president who is pro-equality and prepared to sign this bill when it gets to his desk. So let's just get the job done. Pass the Equality Act in the House and Senate. Let's send it to President Biden so he can sign it into law, and we can finally provide full equality for every LGBTQ American across our country. David, I think you're back to close the Q&A.
So I too have to get back to the floor, but we have time at least for a few questions. Yes, sir.
First thing, and if I can ask two questions real quick. The first one, how do you get the 60 votes in the Senate that you need to pass this? And two, off topic, but Chief Pittman today said that there's a group of militia members who may have been here on the 6th who were plotting to perhaps blow up the Capitol or express a desire to blow up the Capitol around the State of the Union. I'm curious, given all we've learned about the response and the intelligence failures, how safe you all feel and your confidence level in the security and the police leadership.
I'll defer responding to that at another time if that's okay, because I need to get to the floor. I hesitate to speculate about the Senate, but I'll just say one thing before I invite one of the senators to say. But you know, it's the good old-fashioned way. We're going to make our case. Our community is going to advocate with members of the Senate, and we're going to work hard till we get the votes necessary to pass it. There's no shortcut for it. You know, this is really an instance in which the Senate of the United States has to catch up to the American people. As I mentioned, it's overwhelmingly supported Republicans, Democrats, and Independents by 83% of the American people. Another poll shows a majority of voters in every single state in America support non-discrimination protections for the LGBTQ community. So the biggest challenge we face is a lot of people think it's already the law. When you tell them that someone can, you know, get kicked out of their apartment, be denied service in a restaurant, or not be allowed to serve on a jury because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, they can't believe that's true. And that's because it doesn't comport with our basic understanding of fairness and equality in this country. So There's not a shortcut. We're going to work hard and get the votes, and obviously the senators have some tricks up their sleeve about how we do that.
Your question immediately assumes that Republicans will insist on cloture, 60 votes to close debate. And I was thinking about how when Ted Kennedy first brought the Employment Non-Discrimination Act to the floor, back in, I believe it was 1998, we had no one in opposition ask for cloture. So we have a story here of how dramatically the Senate has changed. And I can tell you, as one senator, I do not believe that Mitch McConnell should be able to veto a bill the majority of the Senate supports that is about fundamental human rights. But we're not in 1998, and we are still closer to 2013. And in 2013, I took the Employment Non-Discrimination Act to the floor, and we did not have 60 votes, and we had to get 60 votes, and we worked it. We worked it in partnership with our organizations that are civil rights organizations that have huge insight on the nuances, the language, and the law, and we worked it with our colleagues. And our colleagues shared their stories.
What specifically would you want to tell your colleagues about, they're talking about an infringement of religious liberties, bringing more lawsuits against churches and places of worship?
We were very careful in the Equality Act to ensure that the religious exemptions which currently exist remain undisturbed. And so what I would first say is, in the same way that all of the other areas of civil rights law have established religious exemptions, they would apply in the same to the provisions of the Equality Act. The LGBTQ community is not looking for more protections, nor are we willing to accept less. Just treat it the same as all the other protected classes. So religious organizations would still enjoy the rights they have in terms of their ministerial functions, to limit their services and facilities to members of their own congregation, to members of their own faith and good standing, as they determine. All those exemptions which have been established remain in place. And so that's been an argument that has been advanced, but we have two interests that are protected here: the right to religious expression, the deeply held commitment to ending discrimination. The Equality Act achieves both of those things.
Can I just add to that, the Bostock versus Clayton County decision has basically extended to the entire nation one portion of the Equality Act relating to employment, obviously a critical one, but by doing so has kept intact current and existing religious exemptions. So that's now the reality in the United States. And so I just wanted to underscore what David Cicilline just said, that we want no more, nor should we accept any less.
Thank you, Senator.
Let me take one more.
On the COVID relief package, Senator Schumer this morning said it was a.
Is there any question on the Equality Act? Because I got to run to the floor.
I have one.
Yes.
Chris Stewart has emailed the introduced on Friday the Business for All Act as an alternative to the Equality Act with bipartisan support. Would that bill be better than nothing?
No, that bill very clearly is worse than nothing. It, for the first time in our history, would actually put in federal statute provisions that permit discrimination against the LGBTQ community. It would be a tremendous step backward, which is why it's not supported by any major LGBT organization. All of the major LGBT organizations support the Equality Act. The Stewart bill is a step back in our fight for equality.
Any problem with Democrats sponsoring that bill?
I'm sorry?
Would you have any issue with Democrats co-sponsoring?
Well, I hope people who are committed to equality for the LGBTQ community would not support that bill, because it would put in statute and authorize expressly discrimination against the LGBTQ community.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.